Welcome to Tales of the Resistance, a show that's basically been gearing up for exactly what's happening right now. I'm Amber Hunt. Let's get into it. Los Angeles turned into a flashpoint for resistance last weekend after a series of early morning ICE raids kicked off what quickly spiraled into a citywide showdown. I don't know about you, but it all happened so fast that I had trouble keeping up, so here's a breakdown of how things went down. It began early Friday, June 7th, with a series of coordinated ICE raids across the city. Federal agents hit multiple sites, including a Home Depot warehouse in Van Nuys, an apparel wholesaler in the Fashion District, and a produce distributor in Vernon. According to the Los Angeles Times, dozens were detained, some reportedly without warrants, sparking immediate backlash from immigrant rights groups. Protesters showed up within hours. They chanted, held signs, and tried to physically block ICE vans from leaving. At one point, several people reportedly threw water bottles and other objects at federal vehicles. Tensions were high, but still mostly contained at that point. But as the hours wore on, the protests grew. That afternoon, demonstrators in Van Nuys joined forces with a previously planned downtown rally opposing police brutality. Here's reporter Jacob Soboroff explaining.
So these are two protests converging at the same time here. I want to show you this one that's coming from the Metropolitan Detention Center, which is the jail that is run by the federal government, the county and the federal government downtown in downtown LA. It's converging with this protest that's coming over here.
The combined march swelled to thousands by nightfall, taking over intersections and prompting a large LAPD presence. Saturday saw a city on edge. Protests spread to Koreatown and Boyle Heights. According to the New York Times, a few isolated acts of vandalism occurred. Some windows broke in, 2 Waymo cars set on fire. And while those have been held up by right-wing media as proof things had reached supposed riot levels, the truth is that most protests remained peaceful. That changed after Trump made a surprise announcement. He was deploying 2,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles despite Governor Gavin Newsom's vocal opposition. Here's Newsom talking about Trump's move.
He flamed the fires. This is exactly what he wanted. This is what he intended by illegally acting to federalize the National Guard. And it did exactly what we told his team it would do. It would inflame the anxiety, it would inflame the conditions. He wants to exacerbate the problems. He completely colored them in. He overstated everything. He knowingly went in a reckless way, did something that's almost without precedent in our lifetime, unconstitutional, illegal, immoral, because he knew full well what would persist on the ground. This is Trump's mess.
Mayor Karen Bass condemned the raids and defended the right to protest, but suddenly the streets were filled with troops in camouflage, armored vehicles, and riot control units. Here's Bass talking to KTLA.
This is just completely unnecessary. I think it's the administration just posturing to have 100 troops in Westwood where absolutely nothing had happened at all, and 100 downtown is just overreach.
The idea that deploying the National Guard would quiet things, of course, proved to be utter nonsense. From late Saturday into Sunday, the situation exploded. LA looked like a militarized zone. Armored vehicles rolled through downtown. Troops in fatigues patrolled the streets alongside riot gear-clad LAPD officers. Protesters erected makeshift barricades and blocked freeway on-ramps. Police and guard forces responded with tear gas, rubber bullets, flashbangs, you name it. The LA Times reported more than 100 people were detained. Dozens were injured, including an Australian journalist who was hit with a rubber bullet live on air, an incident that brought international scrutiny.
After hours of standing off, this situation has now rapidly deteriorated. The LAPD moving in on horseback, firing rubber bullets at protesters, moving them on through the heart of LA.
You just shot the You okay?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Are you okay?
Where? Where did it hit you?
One of my friends was on the scene, actor Justin Welborn. You might know him from Justified or the horror flick The Signal. He hadn't planned to protest prior to the National Guard deployment, but said he was compelled to once the federal government stepped in.
You know, January 6ers are all pardoned, and Americans that are exercising their peaceful right to congregate and protest is met by rubber bullets, which I saw people bleeding. I saw a woman's leg get broken. I heard it snap by a police baton. They were firing these rubber cylinder bullets at people somewhat indiscriminately, sometimes with a great deal of zeal and laughing. The LAPD. There have been helicopters everywhere, and Army helicopters as well, or what looked like Army helicopters. They blocked off the freeway preemptively, although it didn't look like anybody was trying to get on the freeway, and they began to corner people in. This is just not right. It's just not right.
The protests weren't limited to one area. A New York Times map shows coordinated marches erupting in Highland Park, Mid-City, South LA, and beyond. Some were planned, others spontaneous. So to recap, it started with workplace raids, then came a grassroots response, then came federal military escalation. And from there, the entire city became a battleground, not just over immigration enforcement, but over the right to protest, and who actually holds power when state and federal governments collide. Credit where it's due, the LA Times has been doing invaluable local coverage, and the New York Times interactive map and photo essay provide essential visual context. As one protester in MacArthur Park told a reporter, quote, "This isn't just about immigration anymore. This is about whether we still have the right to be angry," end quote. So what happens next? Organizers are calling for continued demonstrations, and several civil rights groups, including the ACLU and Black Alliance for Just Immigration, have filed emergency legal challenges over the National Guard deployment. Meanwhile, Governor Newsom filed a lawsuit against the federal government, potentially setting up a major constitutional battle over state sovereignty. On the ground, immigrant rights coalitions are shifting focus to mutual aid and rapid response networks, bracing for further ICE activity. And with the nationwide No Kings protests set for June 14th, Los Angeles could once again become a focal point, this time not just for outrage, but for coordinated strategic resistance. We might well be entering the shit hits the fan portion of this presidency.
Drivers who switch and save with Progressive could save hundreds. With that kind of money, you could go big time on a fancy water bottle with ultra titanium alloy metal. You're not sure why you need all that. I mean, it just holds water. But you're getting it anyway. Because if you're hiking near an active volcano and you accidentally drop the bottle into molten lava, your water will still be icy cold. Switch to Progressive and you could save big time. For water bottles. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, not available in all states. Potential savings will vary.
Let's talk about those No Kings protests. On Saturday, June 14th, Flag Day and Donald Trump's 79th birthday, which might be today if you're listening, tens of thousands of people are expected to take to the streets across the U.S. as part of a coordinated day of resistance known as No Kings Day. The timing, of course, isn't random, and it isn't just a petty response to Trump's birthday. It's sparked by Trump hosting a massive, taxpayer-funded military parade in Washington, D.C., complete with fighter jet, flyovers, tanks, and marching bands. It will cost up to $45 million. Even just cleaning up the streets afterward will cost millions. Organizers say the spectacle is less about patriotism and more about authoritarian optics. And they're not having it. So instead of going to D.C., protesters are staying in their own communities. Events are planned in over 1,400 cities across all 50 states. From Los Angeles to Kalamazoo, folks will be holding marches, teach-ins, concerts, and community cookouts, emphasizing democratic values and local action over centralized power. Here's Rachel Maddow talking about it.
A coalition of groups, including Indivisible and Social Security Works and 5051, They are all organizing a nationwide day of protest for June 14th. They're calling it No King's Day. As they put it on their website, quote, Donald Trump wants tanks in the street and a made-for-TV display of dominance for his birthday, a spectacle meant to look like strength. But real power isn't staged in Washington. It rises up everywhere else.
The events are intentionally nonviolent and decentralized, and many are being led by youth, union members, and first-time activists. Expect signs, expect chants, expect costumes and clever slogans. But most of all, expect people making it clear they're not about to be ruled by some wannabe king, especially not one with tanks rolling down Constitution Avenue. And yes, the hashtag is already trending. Hashtag No King's Day. While much of the national attention is still focused on Los Angeles, another powerful moment of resistance unfolded in Chicago on Monday. More than 200 people gathered at Daley Plaza for a rally organized by immigration rights groups, labor unions, and community coalitions in response to the ICE raids in LA and a new travel ban announced by the Trump administration. This latest ban targets several African and Middle Eastern countries and has been widely condemned as a thinly veiled expansion of Trump's earlier Muslim ban. Here's some live coverage from CBS Chicago on Monday.
This comes as heavy protests broke out in Los Angeles over actions ICE has taken there. The group is also angry over the arrest of immigrants in the South Loop last week, where sources tell us they were told to report an immigration check-in site just to be taken into custody. Now, the activists say they believe the Trump administration is focused on harming communities.
It's plain and clear that Trump is escalating to advance his hateful agenda and resorting to tactics that place people from all communities, immigrant and non-immigrant alike, in danger.
The Chicago event was led in part by Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia, who called the raids and the ban, quote, an attack on the soul of our nation, end quote. Other speakers included representatives from the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights, SEIU, and local sanctuary advocates. Protesters carried signs reading, no ban, no wall, no raids, and chanted in English and Spanish. The event had a clear message. What's happening in Los Angeles won't stay in Los Angeles, and communities across the country are ready to stand in solidarity. If you're looking for a sharp, informed voice chronicling the daily creep of authoritarianism in the U.S., you could check out Today in Fascism, a Substack newsletter by longtime journalist and author Judith Levine. Published daily, the newsletter tracks what Levine calls, quote, the U.S.'s descent into fascism, end quote, drawing inspiration from German diarist Victor Klemperer, who documented Nazi Germany from inside the country. Levine, whose past work has appeared in The Nation, Harper's, and New York Times, is perhaps best known for her controversial and award-winning book, Harmful to Minors. In Today in Fascism, she offers a mix of rapid response commentary, historical context, and personal reflection on the ongoing erosion of civil liberties, reproductive rights, and democratic norms. Her recent posts cover everything from mutual aid organizing under a creeping surveillance state to the public breakup of Trump and Elon Musk's once symbolic political relationship. The newsletter just passed its 100th post and has become a daily touchstone for readers trying to make sense of the news without succumbing to despair. You can find Today in Fascism at judithlevine.substack.com. It's equal parts dispatch, diary, and wake-up call, and it might be worth a read. And no, this wasn't sponsored. Levine is just one voice trying to make sense of where we're headed. But let's come back to where we started, because what happened and is still happening in Los Angeles is sitting heavy and seems to be spreading. We saw ICE raids at dawn, people pulled from jobs without warning, and a community that said, hell no. We saw protests grow from a few dozen to thousands. We saw tear gas, armored vehicles, and National Guard troops rolling through the streets of a major American city without the city's consent. It's alarming, but also oddly hopeful, because the fact that people are still out there protesting matters. The fact that journalists are still filming, lawyers are still suing, and local leaders are still defying federal overreach means something very basic, but super powerful. The system isn't gone. You hear a lot of comparisons between today's U.S. and 1930s Germany, but what we saw this weekend, that didn't happen in Germany, not at that scale, because by the time Hitler took full control, dissent had already been crushed. Resistance like this doesn't happen in places where dissent has been erased. You don't get mass protests, front-page coverage, and spontaneous solidarity marches in fascist regimes. You get silence. You get fear. You get people disappearing quietly, not chanting in the streets. So that's not where we are. Not yet. As bleak as it feels, that's the thread we hold on to. This has been Tales of the Resistance, a production of Grab Bag Collab. The show's engineered by Amanda Rossman and reported by Amanda and me. Daisy Egan also chimed in this week. Support Grab Bag Collab at patreon.com/GrabBagCollab.